If you haven't grabbed a notebook yet, I'm going to encourage you to do that. And if you need to grab a glass of water or anything quick just before we get started, because my hope is that this time really does help to give you both some encouragement and that little boost to maybe really honor whatever that idea is that's been spinning around in your brain. You're clearly here because something has been tugging at you, something has been continuing to kind of swirl around in your thoughts. And I think it is truly so very, very cool and powerful that each of you is really noticing that nudge and taking it seriously. So for me, I'll just share with you. So for those who maybe aren't very familiar with my story, so I'm a psychotherapist by trade. And after I'd been running my own private psychotherapy practice, and after I lost my little girl, Nora, when she was just a day old, I obviously, put everything on a shelf for a while and took some time to really just focus on getting to be where I needed to be. But I also knew from like really early on that like just my wiring is like I knew I needed to do something with this. And the more time that I spent kind of looking for supports and the more time I kind of spent searching for what I needed, the more form it really started to take of some of the things that I wanted to create and some of the gaps that I wanted to fulfill. And for me, a lot of my therapy work and those resources that I created were a bit of a natural extension for me to kind of lean into that direction. And it's been interesting because it's been, I guess, 5 years now since I've been doing the Love and Loss Project. And it's really strange for me to kind of step back in these moments and look at what that has offered me. I remember people saying to me, at different times, like, oh, this must be really healing for you. And in some ways, I almost, to be totally honest, I almost kind of dismiss that a little bit when people would say that, because, I really want to make the distinction that this isn't my diary that I'm posting online, right? Like that's not what's happening here. I'm creating resources for people. But I really have come to be so aware that it has been really healing for me. So right now, my Love and Loss Project and the resources that I make there are being used by women and couples in 24 different countries, which kind of blows my mind because I definitely did not have that vision when I started. I definitely did not know what this would become or really how important it would continue to stay for me in my life, that I would really be still really drawn to be doing this work 5 years later. But what I have kind of really noticed is that it absolutely has been a vehicle of transformation and power in many ways for me. And there's this quote that I remember hearing somebody say, I came across one time, and it basically said, if you do not transform your pain, you will transmute it onto the people around you. You will transfer it onto the people around you. And I think there's some real truth in that. And for me, my therapy work and the resources I were creating was how I was kind of transferring some of my pain into something different, transforming it into that. But I absolutely also know that that can take a lot of different forms. And to me, I really wholeheartedly believe that we are still living in a time, no matter where we are in the world, where baby loss is still a taboo topic. And this is kind of something that still exists a little bit in the shadows. And it's absolutely, one of the key things that I really realized through this was the isolation and the silence around it. And so for me, I'm really excited to just be noticing the number of clients that I've had over the while who have a book dream, who are wanting to start a fundraiser, who have done some really cool things. And I think it's so neat to really just kind of create a bit of a circle where we can talk about, some of the ways that that people are both transforming their pain into something of purpose, because I think there's, especially as I put my therapist hat on, I think, my goodness, there's so much power in that. But I think that it is also so very, very needed in the world. And I think really as each person who has that kind of instinct in whatever form that takes for them, I think the more that we honor that and kind of step into that place of creating some kind of offering in whatever form that takes, I think that uplifts everything. And I think that truly the ripple effect of that is really hard to measure. And it's something that I don't ever want to minimize the power of that. For me, it's been fascinating to see just the messages that I get from people at times that say, your work has really kind of got me through. And, it's these ways that you can't necessarily predict of how something is going to intersect and ricochet, right, in different ways. So tonight, I want to introduce everyone. I say tonight because I'm ahead on the time zone and everybody else here. So we're going to spend about an hour and a half here together tonight. Like I said, I'm really happy to make this as useful to people as possible. So really feel free to share questions. I know that some people had sent them in ahead of time as well. But I want to introduce you to somebody that has been doing some very cool work in the world. If people are not familiar with Crystal-Gayle Williams, she's been doing some really trailblazing, massive advocacy and trailblazing work where she lives. And I'm also a bit in awe of the magnitude of what she's been able to create and really create in many ways as a really one-woman show. So I thought it would be awesome to be able to highlight, just give me some questions. No worries. So I'm just going to ask her to, I thought it'd be really interesting for her to be able to share a little bit about what has helped her to create and put some of her offerings out into the world, and in the hopes that that also helps to inspire and maybe give people some practical tips as well, because for me, that's always super useful. The inspiration's great. But I think, for me, there's always that question of like, and how do you put that into action, right? Like, how do I truly execute some of those things? So welcome, Crystal-Gayle. I'm so happy that you're here.
Thanks for having me, April. Hi, everyone. So, as April mentioned, I'm Crystal-Gayle Williams, and I live in Jamaica. And I experienced loss in 2018, in September 2018. I was 6 months pregnant, and I developed severe preeclampsia and HELLP syndrome. When I went to the doctor, when I first had some symptoms, they didn't pick it up because there was no protein in my urine and there was no high blood pressure. So the second time I went back to the doctor, they picked it up and they immediately sent me to the hospital. My baby was born alive, but unfortunately, because he was just 24 weeks old, and in Jamaica, we don't have the resources necessary to keep a baby that young alive. He died 2 days later in the NICU. And since then, it has been a really hard process to deal with. So basically in Jamaica, I know we say that loss is very taboo in our society. Well, in Jamaica, I think it's like twice as much. Like there was nothing here. There literally were no resources. I had a doula, and she knew persons through her work that had also had their babies die, and she introduced me to them, and that's how I got, some comfort, in knowing that I wasn't that alone. She also introduced me to this group that someone created, but the group was very inactive. I guess it was just created and it was just, left. So there really wasn't anything here that was, active and going on. So I basically decided to start something from scratch because in trying to find healing and, comfort, I researched and found there was a baby loss community in America, in, different parts of the world, but there wasn't anything in the Caribbean or in Jamaica. So I thought that I wanted to create one for Jamaica because when I entered the baby loss community, the person seemed so nice and it was just a great experience. And I thought that Jamaica should have something like this. So in October 2018, I just went out on a limb. I started a Facebook page and an Instagram page, and I started to share my story. And persons who I didn't even know, persons who I even knew, I had no idea that they had experienced a loss, came to me and, they were telling me they were sorry for my loss and they were telling me about their own experiences. And literally persons from all walks of life, persons even knew, but I wouldn't think that they went through that, were sharing their experiences with me. And I found it so amazing that to know that there is healing in sharing, you know. So I'm very glad I started the community. It has been really overwhelming, um, you know, but we're getting there. There's a lot of things that need to be done in Jamaica, like a whole lot. We don't have any of the resources that USA or UK may have in terms of bereavement photographer at hospitals or bereavement suites, called the cots, outfits for babies when they die. We don't have any of those stuff. So there's really a far way to go. And, the support that's needed is also going to be very crucial, but I'm sure eventually we'll get there. It's just takes little steps, baby steps, but I'm sure we'll get there.
So Crystal, one of the things I was so impressed with was that you managed to have Jamaica. So let me make sure if I've got this right, correct me if I'm wrong. So you managed to get the local politicians and decision makers to make an official pregnancy and infant loss remembrance day in Jamaica as well. Is that
Yes.
right?
Yes. So last year I petitioned. So we have a governor general here. So I petitioned the governor general to make a proclamation to recognize October as Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month, and to have October 15th as the Pregnancy and Infant Loss Remembrance Day. So it was a really tough process, I have to admit. I didn't get the notification that it was approved until literally October 1. I was on a flight out of the country, and my friend messaged me to say that she got a letter from King's House, and she said the governor general says it's been approved. I'm like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. I was like shaking. It was like I literally cried tears of joy on that plane. It was just amazing. I felt so happy because I know that this is the first step to create awareness, having a month, designated to create awareness. And I mean, even though you spread awareness every day, having that month really makes a difference. So last October, we did a lot of activities around the month just to commemorate it, as well as to spread awareness all over. I did interviews, and it really brought more persons to the support group, because I created a private WhatsApp support group, and through that, persons have been joining the group, getting support whenever they need it, and supporting the other mothers in there. I created one for dads as well, but the men is kind of really hard to reach too. I know it's hard in other countries, but I'm telling you, it's harder. It's like, I think it's twice as harder here because of our culture. Just to get them to speak about it it's not, I find it's so hard. Even my own husband, I have an issue with that. So it's gonna take some time, because we have a mental health stigma, here as well, but it's really bad. So I'm hoping that as time progresses, that persons will take charge of their mental health and just want to deal with it head on instead of suppressing it, which is always worse than speaking about it.
And I just want to say, I think I just want to highlight as well how absolutely massive that is, because when I actually step back and think about it, so as I kind of started offering things and finding what else was out there, for me there was some touch points and some other people, and the more I worked in this area and dialed into that, the more people I discovered. But in Jamaica there was really nothing. So for those who maybe aren't aware already, Crystal was named literally one of the top 12 women of 2019 in Jamaica, which says a lot about just really the massive, I'm assuming, uphill battle that you probably had to go through, and how strong of an advocate and a voice you really needed to be, because that sounds very uphill, very uphill.
It's hard. It's a lot of work. We have a long way to go. I'm going to admit, it's really tough, but just using the support that I have to get what needs to be done, you know, finding the persons who are willing to do the work because I can't do it alone, you know, I need help. So like for instance, in our support group, we have weekly discussions now, and someone from the group hosts those discussions where we talk about different topics and, you know, get their views on it, how they're healing, how they're coping. Um, so just stuff like that. We try to plan well, we used to do quarterly, but because of COVID-19, that's kind of thrown things off. You know, but we try our best to just do what we can. And I'm just trying to get the support wherever I can because, well, April told me this, that, you know, sometimes you're going to plan things and you're expecting this, you know, great support, you know, to come out and, you know, attend your events or, you know, support something that you're having, and you might not get the support that you thought you would get. But I remember April telling me that if it's even one person that attends, or if it even helps one person, that is a lot. So just, you know, be thankful and just take it, you know, take it as it comes. So I've been trying to do that because sometimes it gets disheartening when you plan your events and the support that you expected to get is just not there. So just trying to accept that. Sometimes it's hard, but yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree because I've been there for sure, right? And it's difficult when you pour a lot of hours and a lot of heart and soul into kind of setting up a space or offering something, and then you're like the only one there, or like, you know, nobody says that they were going to comes, and it's oh, my light's just falling over there. It's a bit kind of, well, it takes the wind out of your sails that little bit, right?
Yes, it
So
does.
I'm curious if you don't mind sharing, you know, what were some of the, or what was one of the challenges that you really faced in doing the work that you've been able to do, and what's helped you to navigate that or get through some of those things?
So I think I just mentioned one of the challenges, which is getting support from others.
Mm-hmm.
It really takes a while to build momentum because of the nature of the, you know, of the community. I mean, we know baby loss is very taboo, and mental health is also taboo, and not a lot of persons want to address the elephant in the room, basically. So it's really just having to understand that everyone grieves differently and you can only guide them. So the choice is really up to them. So that's really been one of the biggest challenge for me. And you know, the persons in the space themselves are not always forthcoming for events or projects. So it's just having to accept that, really. I think one of the other challenge for me has been how um, backwards, I don't want to really want to use the word backwards, but just Jamaica is not really where I would want it to be in terms of the support that's offered, you know, to grieving parents. You know, as I said, we literally have no systems in place. There's no protocols in place. So it's really like starting from scratch. So there's a lot that needs to be done. Um, and you can't accomplish all of it all at once. So it's really going to take a while. You know, it's just how long that's gonna take. I don't know. Because I had plans for this year, you know, to meet with the minister and different hospitals, but because of COVID-19 and their focus, you know, there's no way I can have a meeting. I've already been told that. So I really have to put things on back burner right now until things have been a little bit more settled. So I'm just really trying to build things in the virtual space as much as possible while, you know, things are going on, you know, with COVID-19. So I don't know. I guess I'm gonna have to do, there's a lot that needs to be done. So I'm just gonna have to try to find the people to get it done. I mean, I would really love if, you know, we have the same type of system that's in the UK or USA, where someone who has experienced a loss and they're using their creative arts, just like how Andrea is, you know, making the cards. That's really nice. Or using their talent to do photography, you know. I wish we had those type of things, you know, out here. It's kind of hard, you know, to get those things done. But you know, I'm sure eventually we will. Another challenge is also the healthcare system. It's not there's not a protocol set in place where when a baby dies, this happens. You know, there's nothing to follow. So that needs to be set up. So you'll have that different persons experience different things. So where is it that I was allowed to hold my baby and have a little bit of time with him? Other persons didn't get that. I wasn't asked if I wanted any pictures of my baby. Other persons got that opportunity. So it's just like there are a lot of silos operating at the different hospitals at different places. And it's just hard, but you know, as I said, there's a lot of work that needs to be done to get everything operational or at least near to that.
Can I ask, Crystal, how how have you managed to get people to even meet with you or to listen to you or to take, you know, what some of your requests and advocacy work has been seriously? How did you get people to even be willing to kind of sit down and talk about that stuff?
You mean the actual persons in the lost community, or you mean like the policymakers?
Like the policymakers, the people in the hospitals. What would kind of your tips or suggestions be if people are wanting to, you know, venture into making contacts with different collaborations or different decision makers?
Okay, well, for me, I just called the offices. Like when I was doing the proclamation, I literally just called the office, but I kind of had an edge because of my job. I am in contact with the Governor General's office very frequently. So I was able to reach out to a contact that I have there. So a good thing to do is really to, you know, leverage your contacts, you know, maybe it might not be someone that you know, but it might be someone that you know that knows the person. You know, you can reach out to them and build, you know, just build your network that way. So I've done that. Another thing was that I reached out to persons who knew the administrators at the hospitals. And I said, I want to get this done. Can you put me on to the person that, you know, is in charge? And that's what they did. And, you know, it takes a while, especially if you don't really know the persons in charge. But so you have to do your research, of course, to find out who you need to connect with to get this done, and just really building your network and, you know, make you using it as a leverage to get what you want. I've seen persons use social media as well for that. You can do petitions online. I've seen someone on my Instagram who did that as well. And she, you know, she's trying to get a law passed to be called Autumn's Law, that will allow for babies younger than 24 weeks to be saved when they're born. So you really have to try to leverage all your resources as much as possible. And social media is great for that, because even if you don't have any money to do a boosted post, maybe you can tag persons, you know, share it across their network. And that way you can get your message across as far as you want to. But social media is a good tool, you know, because everybody's on social media. So it's really something that you should look into getting, especially if you want to start a cause. You can use your own personal social media if you want. I decided not to, because I just wanted to keep a separate, you know, space for that. I mean, even though I share things on my personal page, I don't go as an in-depth as I would on my page, you know, as I would for the Money page. So separate platforms for that. So whenever I'm emailing persons or calling persons, I'll always make reference to my pages to tell them to check these out for further information. And yeah, so just trying to leverage things as much as I can.
That's really cool. I just want to go back to one thing you had said too around that you really worked on making your contacts and building those relationships with the people that you were needing to get on board. When I think back to my very first kind of steps in doing what led to the Love and Loss Project, it's interesting because it makes me think of one of the mistakes that I made looking back on it was I initially had made all these comfort kits that I was super proud of. And I had really like put like so much thought and effort into like what were going to be in these kits. And I put them all together and I thought about like, okay, these are offices that don't have storage. So what can I offer that's super small? And I contacted all of these midwives and all of these hospitals, and I heard back like nothing. Like as one example, one time I made 14 contacts and 2 people got back to me and were like, yeah, we're kind of interested. And I remember one of the midwives, the director there had got back to me and said, you know, we refer all of our high risk pregnancies to the hospital, so we don't have that happen for us. And I'm like, that's not even true. Like, that's not even true. And so like, it was just the most interesting and at times kind of disheartening experience. Because, you know, I'd put all this effort and I thought I was doing wonderful things. And when I look back on it, probably one of the pieces I was missing, or the piece I was missing, was I don't think I really understood the importance of building my relationship with those decision makers. Looking back on it, I'll totally just own, I just thought I made something really great. And so like, I didn't understand why people didn't want my really great thing I was offering for free. and I did not really take in, you know, that whole, wow, I have to truly get people on board with this. Like, to me, I'm like, I feel like I'm dropping off like, you know, boxes of cookies, being like, here's these amazing free cookies, you can just have some. And people are like, we don't want your cookies. So it was like the strangest thing. I was like, I don't get what's happening here. But looking back on it, I did not really nurture those points of contacts when I was starting off either. It's interesting.
Well, I think another point to make is that it's not just about nurturing the contacts. Sometimes there's a lot of red tape to go through within government or these organizations. Like when I was supposed to get the contact for the hospital, I went through so many different persons, and everybody was saying like at one point, someone was saying that this was someone else's job, but they could help me. And then at the same time, when I spoke with someone from the NICU, she was like, well, you know, we don't really have any time to be, you know, doing this, but it's not important to them. So that's another thing as well. If it's not important to them, it's going to be hard to convince them to, you know, support your cause. That's why I think social media is so important and raising awareness, because the more you raise awareness, the easier it will be when that day comes to actually get through to the policymakers. So I'm trying my best as possible right now to raise awareness, you know, as I go along, so that things can be done in the future. Another thing I did was that I partnered with an organization in Jamaica who is doing a lot of work, maternal, I think they're called Partnership for the Rights for Infants and Maternal Infant Mortality. So they're trying to reduce maternal infant mortality in Jamaica. It's EU funded. So another tip that you can do is just find those organizations or those charities that are trying to do those things already. Because it can be related somewhat to the cause, because that's really what you're trying to do as well, you know. So I partnered with them, we keep in contact, and you know, they have their contacts in the government as well. So it will be easy to get things, you know, in the channel through them. So I don't have to do a lot of the work that way. So it's just things like that that you have to think about, you know, think about organizations that are already on the ground doing some work. It might not be directly related to what you're doing, but it can somehow impact it. So I think that's a good thing to do as well. And yeah, so just have a vision of what you want to do. I mean, I have a really big vision, but it's too much. So I try to do is just to see what I can do in the now. Because as I said, I had a big vision for this year. It didn't work out because I really wanted to start doing support group meetings in hospitals, in the different hospitals do support meetings like bi-monthly. COVID-19 came, couldn't meet with anybody. That's on a pause. So I started, instead of stopping completely, I decided to do virtual support group meetings. So as of June, we had our first virtual support group meeting. So just things like that, you know, things might not go the way that you would want it to go, but it's really challenging. It's easy to get disheartened, but you still have to, you know, press on, and you have to ask yourself, why are you really doing this? You know, I had to ask myself this a lot of times. And so I know why I'm doing this. So I have this goal that I look and I say, I want to break the silence. That's the main goal. That's the main vision that I want, because I want more healing to take place. I want us to focus on normalizing grief and baby loss so that we can facilitate support and healing in Jamaica. And so I know that I want this, and I just have to try to find the ways that will get me there, you know? Yeah.
So can I ask, and it's interesting for me when I hear you say that, of how like you have to kind of keep going back to that question of like, why am I doing this? Because I don't know if other people can relate to that same question, depending on maybe where you're at with some of your projects and ideas. But truly, that's something that probably every couple months I have to sit down and literally like mind map it and write it out of like, what am I doing and why? Because it does take so much time and so much energy, and yeah, it takes a lot of you. So for me, that's always kind of a question I have to go back and check in on. Yeah, it's interesting. So how did you know to really take that instinct seriously for yourself? That when you've had these ideas of what you want to create, how did you know to really listen to that instinct? Because I think, and I'm asking because I'm just wondering as people are on the line, and I've been at this place in my own life sometimes too, where you're like, okay, I have this idea to do a book, or I have this idea to do this thing over here, or I have this idea to do this thing over here. And I think a lot of people have all of, you know, have a lot of creative ideas or a lot of passionate ideas. And I think sometimes it's really hard to really lean into taking that seriously, and investing time and energy and committing to making it happen. So I'm just curious for you, how did you manage to kind of go from like, here's an idea to like, I need to do this. I know I need to do this thing.
Well, I think the first thing is that I'm a Christian, so you know, I prayed about it, and I just basically just did what the Spirit led me to do. And I think a big part of why I decided to form For the Money was because I wanted to find a way to honor my son. And I love hearing his name. I love seeing his name. So doing all of these things and seeing his name, hearing his name being called for a cause, it has really been what has propelled me to keep doing what I'm doing, and just hearing the feedback from persons, you know, across the world in Jamaica who are getting help and who are supportive as well. You know, it really makes a difference. And my husband, he's been an amazing, a tremendous help. Like, wow, I'm so thankful for him, because there are times when I want to give up, and I'm just like for instance, if when I plan an event and you know the support that I thought I would be getting doesn't pan out, and I just want to give up, and I'm like, I'm tired, I can't do this anymore, you know, they said they would show up, you know, where are they, you know, and he's like, no, you know, he's trying to, you know, encourage me and tell me that if even one person turned up, you know, that's, and you know, just keep doing what you're doing and honoring the man his name. And so I think that really inspires me, you know, just encourages me to continue. And just hearing the comments from persons who have been assisted, it's really great. So that really helps, you know. And yeah, just having the support from everyone in the baby loss community, both here in Jamaica and overseas. You guys are amazing. So thank you.
Wow. Wow. It's so cool what you've done with all of that. And yeah, and I totally get that when, you know, when you say, okay, here's this event, I thought that there'd be the support for this, you know, I really was expecting this to be more held by people as well. And I'm holding it alone in this moment. And yeah, that takes a lot to kind of keep going with that for sure in those times. And I think those times are inevitable, whether you're starting a greeting card collection or whether you're starting, to a support group or whatever that is. I think that, in my opinion, becomes a built-in part of that process of that time where you kind of put something out there and there's just not the response that you were really hoping for. Yeah, and so when I think about that, one of the things that helps me through that is one, definitely remembering that I think the people that need it reach it and get it. And I think at the same time, when it comes to some of the group stuff and that kind of thing, it's always helpful for me to remember, when I hear women say, for instance, at the in-person weekend retreats I was doing, and women would come and I would be surprised at how often I would hear them say, I almost turned the car around, or I almost did not get on the plane. and I really honor the bigness of how much it really takes to follow through on whatever that thing is that is good for you to do, right? And I think that applies to whether we're looking at showing up for a new group or a weekend retreat, or whether we're looking at leaning into, here's these things I really want to create, at a policy level, this change I want to make happen here. And so it's funny, right? Because you're kind of jumping off that tree limb in a way, and just you're not really sure what's going to happen next. So yeah, I think that takes a lot of guts, and it, to me, I'm definitely aware of how much you've probably, I'm assuming, have had to really leap and then kind of scrape your knee and then leap again and then kind of fall and scrape your knee and then leap again. So I think it's so very cool. And yeah, to me, it's astounding to think about what your work has been creating for people on so many levels there. That is, yeah, if I think about that too much right now, like I'll probably start to cry. But that is like so massive to me. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing all of that. I'm going to invite people to ask their questions live, but what I might do is just go through some of the questions that came in on email first, just so that then, because this is being recorded, so when I share the recording, it won't show anybody else who is a part of this other than Crystal-Gayle and I. So I'm maybe just going to answer some of those questions, and then if people want to have more of a conversation about this, I'll turn off the recording and we can just, because I'm also excited to hear about what people are working on, and I'm happy to support really in any way I can. I'm not an expert on all of it, but I'll certainly, we're willing to share, and Crystal-Gayle's willing to share anything that we can offer that might help to get your work out there. So some of the questions that came in, let me just find them here. I know one of the questions was, I think we maybe touched on this a little bit around the idea of interested in learning more about fundraising, but I think you maybe touched on that a little bit in terms of how you talked about building those relationships and making those points of contact. Is there anything else that you would add? I don't know if have you done much fundraising at all, Crystal-Gayle?
Okay, so I have not done any fundraising as yet, because one of the main reasons for that is I'm not a registered, For the Man is not a registered NGO. So there hasn't been any fundraising as yet. I really want to do it this year, but I've just had, other things to do, and it's something I need to get done, but it's a process out here. It's so long.
Mm-hmm.
So, I want to get that done, but I have not reached the point where I need to do fundraising as yet to do the stuff that I want to do, because of situation in Jamaica, I want to raise as much awareness, before we branch out into asking for money to get stuff that needs to be done. So awareness building is really important. I'm sure by next year that will be done. And I'm already thinking that will probably be in the form of events or persons donating, trying to organize with persons. If someone buys something, then, a percentage goes to For the Money that way. But it's really going to take some networking and relationship building, because, as I said, in Jamaica, there is no platform for that type of stuff. So it's going to be hard, to get that going. So yeah, no fundraising as yet, but I've seen persons do fundraising on Instagram, where persons are donating via GoFundMe, or they're doing raffles where if you donate X amount of money, you get your name into a raffle and you get a prize. So things like that can be done. It's not, I think fundraising isn't hard to, get started. It's just to where you get the money from. So
Mm-hmm.
it probably be easier in wherever you're from. But yeah, I'm big at fundraising because I'm a part of other charitable organizations, and we normally do like bake sales, or we have containers where in different branches at banks or supermarkets where persons donate money, towards a cause. So you can think about ways like that. And but I think a really good way to do fundraising is to do cause related marketing. So really what that is finding a company, like probably could be an insurance company. So that's actually what I'm thinking of doing. So use an insurance company. When persons purchase like a policy, they can give a percentage to your NGO. That way you'll always have money coming in. So that's actually a good thing to think about. Find companies who, even if they're not directly related to your cause, like there is some connection and they might be interested after they hear your pitch, they'll be interested in donating to your cause. And that way, whenever a customer purchases a product or service from them, they can donate a percentage to your cause so that you can help more persons. So cause marketing is really good for that. So it's something to think about.
It's really cool. Thanks, Crystal-Gayle. One of the other questions was, what are the best ways to promote a book? And how should I promote it online? And should I use more than one platform to promote it? So what I might kind of jump on and say to that is, I think, so I've obviously become a fan of using social media. Crystal-Gayle's talked about the value of social media as well. And for me, I think of that in a couple ways. So one, you really cut out the middleman. So that's actually, when I think back on my process, that's became really one of those key steps, is because I remember after my comfort kit fail, that nobody wanted my comfort kits. I remember then I had connected with an agency, and I had offered to volunteer and run support groups for them. And again, maybe this is like my ego talking, but I thought as a registered therapist that, that was a really generous offer of me to be offering to, offer my skills and do that for free. And again, I found they didn't have space at the time. They were looking for space, and months went by. And another interesting lesson learned, while I was kind of sitting on the bench and waiting for direction, after they had said, oh, you know what, we're looking for space, we just need to hear back. I made a few calls to hear back on that. And then in the meantime, somebody else had offered to facilitate the group and had found space. And the next time I called back, the group was up and running. And they were like, well, we could see if you want to co-facilitate. And I'm like, you know what, I'm happy to fill in if she's off, but really if the need's met, I'm good. I'll do something else with my time. But it also kind of really nudged me towards a direction, and different things work for different people, but it nudged me online at that point, because I thought, I keep encountering rejection after rejection after rejection, and wall after wall after wall, and I'm just going to build my own platform here. And so that's how I ended up doing things online. So the cool thing is, I think with social media, as someone had just shared, that it's such a powerful marketing tool. And it is, because when we're talking about marketing, we're really just talking about being able to get your work in front of people that might want to see that and might want to make use of whatever it is that you're offering. So for me, that's allowed me to create a circle with people directly, instead of waiting for somebody else to call me back or waiting for somebody else to decide that, they wanted to work with me. So that's kind of one thought on that. So I would say definitely promoting your stuff online. I think there's value in that for sure. And in terms of the question of using one platform, more than one platform to promote it, when I'm talking to women who are starting businesses, the piece of advice that I really give is, and this is just my own perspective on it, so maybe other people would see this differently, but my own opinion is, I think there's value in kind of focusing somewhere and doing that well, as opposed to loading up 5 different media streams and venues that then becomes overwhelming and a little bit haphazard in a way. So for me, I would think about, where do you like to already spend time? What's the platforms or the social medias that you already enjoy using? And maybe just start on learning to do those well, in terms of getting your message out there. And yeah, and again, when I think of the amount of time it actually takes to do all of these things is quite a lot. So I have like a Twitter account, because somewhere I read a thing that said you should have Twitter. So it's like, okay, I should have Twitter. And really, like, I don't know that I've ever made a tweet in my life. So like, you know, and it just becomes one more thing that I think we can get a bit distracted in and lost on. So I would say, you know, focus on the things you already enjoy doing and learn and practice getting better at that. What's your 2 cents on that, Crystal-Gayle?
Okay, so just to add, as you said, social media is a great marketing tool. Really, when it comes to promoting any type of product, you first have to look on who your target audience is and where is your target audience spending most of their time. So it might be Instagram, it might be Facebook, it may be Twitter. It all depends on where your target audience is spending most of their time. So since Facebook and Instagram are integrated, the good thing about those is that you can actually boost ads and they can be seen on both of those platforms. So I wouldn't say to stick to one platform, because I've realized this in the past. The Instagram ads actually get more traction than the Facebook ads. It all depends on what you're promoting. Depends on who you're boosting it to. So, but I think that it's good to have your posts or your ads on different social media platforms, because a lot of people are on Instagram, but also a lot of persons on Facebook. So it's good to integrate those two. Twitter, for community, maybe not as much, you know. I mean, Twitter isn't really used a lot for promotion. So it's, you know, it's different. Also, someone, Johnny said using influential people is also a great idea. Yes. If you can, you know, if you can get influential persons to promote your book for you, or your cards, or blog, you know, that would be great as well. Like when I did my interview last year on the TV for Pale Month, I know someone who, and she interviewed me. She's kind of an influencer, I guess. She's influential. And after the interview, she, you know, shared her experience, because she also went through losses. She shared her experience on social media, and then she tagged my pages, you know, and said that persons who want to find support can, you know, check out For the Money. And, you know, whenever I have anything coming up, I will send it to her and ask her to post it for me if she can. And I'm just trying to build that network with persons who are influential as well. It's not quite there yet, you know, because there are a lot more, you know, to tap into, but, you know, so, you know, they're so busy. Influential persons are not so busy. But if you know someone who knows them that can get you through the door, then do it, because a lot of those, I mean, in our space, we know that loss is very common. It's not spoken about, but it's very common. So I can guarantee you that that influential that you may reach out to may know what you're going through, because they've been through it, or a relative or anyone, they know what you're going through. So I think that's really good to tap into, you know, tap into those influential persons. Facebook Live is good too, having persons react while going live. Oh, I didn't read that. I didn't read all of that.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, well, I don't use Facebook. I've never gone live before. I've never gone live before on For the Money social media. There's a different audience on Instagram compared to Facebook. So it just all depends on where you see your target audience is. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. And I just want to add too, so I think that point around, Janice's point around connecting with influencers, right, or people who are maybe doing similar work or supporting women in a different way, I think that can be really super powerful. And I think that can really help to get some awareness going on what it is that you're offering or what it is that you're creating. One thing that I might suggest, because as someone who has people come and approach me and asking me to share their books or asking me to share their work or different things like that, I've certainly seen that done well at times, and I've also seen that done not well at times. So for me, one thing I heard somebody say one time, and I thought it was this great piece of advice, that really you should be offering to give something. That if you're approaching somebody who has a platform or who you're possibly wanting them to share your stuff, is to really be offering something to them. Because I'll give you just an example. So every once in a while, somebody will come and ask me, because I have an online little bookstore as part of my site where I share resources. So I'll get a message every once in a while where somebody will be like, hey, I wrote this book. Would you share this? Would you share your book with my audience? And I just want to, both acknowledge that's awesome that you wrote a book. That's great. It's probably so very needed in the world. And even though it sounds like this super simple request to be like, hey, April, will you put my book on your page? You've actually asked me to do 5 hours of work, give or take, right? Because now I have to order your book. You didn't send the book to me. I have to order your book. I have to read your book to make sure that it truly is in line with what I believe in and the level of quality that I would want to introduce to my circle, who I feel like I want to maintain their trust, right? And value their time. That if I'm saying this is a great book, it's because I mean that from the bottom of my heart, that I feel like it's useful to people. So now I have to read your book, and I have to take time off of my regular to-do list to go into my website, upload things, write copy on it. And so it's these funny things that I came to realize that sometimes people would come to me and they say, April, I want to collaborate with you. But then when I would talk to them, they don't want to collaborate with me at all. They want me to share that thing that they made. And that's not really collaborating. That's just asking me to share your thing. So for me, because it's time consuming and I'm a busy woman and I have like my own to-do list that's like 90 items long, I think we have to be aware that we're asking somebody to put our to-do list items ahead of all of their own. So it's not that I don't want to support people. It's just that it's also time consuming on my end of things. So if somebody came to me and said, April, like I'd like to do a workshop with you, or, I'm sharing the resources that you've made with my people, because of course I also want to get my resources in front of people and help people, with the things I've created as well. That feels collaborative to me, where you're truly like, how can I support you in doing the work that you're doing? And here's what I would love if you could support me in doing the work that I'm doing. To me, that feels really the definition of the word collaborative, where, I've had people that have said, I want to collaborate with you. And then as I've invested time and energy in like talking to them and getting a sense, they didn't want to collaborate with me at all. They just wanted me to share their thing. And I'm like, ooh, sometimes that feels icky. Sometimes it feels a little bit like I'm being used. That's not really collaborative. Does that make sense when I describe it that way? What's your thoughts on that, Crystal?
Yeah, I agree. I agree that so I guess you have to just find which influencer really connects to your cause or can be connected, so that if you're asking them to share something from you, you're able to also be able to share something from them or allow them to benefit as well through your cause. So yeah, I think that's a good point to make.
Mm-hmm.
Really using people, but we're also saying, how can I help you to build your platform, and can you do this for me as well, so that there's a win-win situation.
Mm-hmm. And that we're kind of treating people as people, right? Because it's just that awareness of, that it's really, you're asking someone's time, and that's a lot.
I guess because we see them as influencers, and we probably don't think that they need any more help. So maybe that's also it as well.
Mm-hmm. Someone's just saying, a friend wanted me to collaborate in selling makeup and bow ties. He did the bow ties when I sold the makeup. I promoted his ties, and he never once shared any of my products, right? And so, Yeah, and that doesn't feel good, right? Because then we're like, ooh, I think really, not all the time. There's lots of stuff that I'll do that truly is 100% just volunteer or just me saying, I'm familiar with this person's work and I want to support it, and or I have a relationship with them and I really trust the integrity of what they're about. But there's other times where you're like, yeah, it doesn't. I think sometimes it's just nice when there's a reciprocal energy exchange of I also value what you do and I also value your time and work too. Yeah. And yeah, again, it becomes about that relationship, right? And someone's saying, it's truly difficult though to really find people who share our vision. Yeah. And I think that's also where, when I think about it back in the day when I was applying to podcasts, I truly used to do the thing where I would just kind of copy and paste my template and like replace people's name in it and send it off to 100 different people. And then I realized that when somebody sends you that kind of thing, you can tell, you clearly just cut and paste my name in this. This is not personal or meaningful about me at all. And yeah, and it doesn't really make you want to lean in and do that. So I think it can feel like it's slower to really work on building your relationship with somebody, but I think it actually in the long run is going to take you a lot farther, a lot faster, right? That if we're really kind of connecting to people as people, I think that has a totally different exchange to it. So now, if I'm applying to a podcast, it's because I really like your podcast, right? It's because I really value what you do. It's not just me being like, hey, how can I get my voice out in another way? So yeah, because it just has a different feeling to it. So I'm just aware of the time. What I might do is just stop recording so that people who are on the call live can maybe ask their questions more privately. Crystal-Gayle, do you want to share where people can find you or how they can support the work that you're doing these days?
Oh, sure. I'll just put it in the chat, but it's for the money, and I'm on Facebook, Instagram. I'm also on Twitter. I don't really use it often.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean, I made a Twitter account late last year, but it really was just to tap into people that were on that side in case, because there are some people who only use one social media platform. So it's really just, they can find you on Twitter and then they can go to another form to find you. So that's why I joined Twitter, but I don't really use it. But I'm really active on Facebook and Instagram.
Yeah, Instagram is kind of my favorite place to hang out too. So I also
Yeah.
do the thing where it automatically shares to Facebook, but
Yes.
for whatever reason, I love Instagram. So Crystal-Gayle is at for the number 4 Damani, and I'm at with.love.april.